The only real God is the one that you believe in. Start looking for the God in others. And if you find you're tuning into a wave, well then I don't know much about being saved.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, friends.
Welcome into another episode of Spiritual Philos-o-Chatter with the Joneses. I'm Danny Jones.
And I am Samantha Jones.
And here we are, episode 62.
62.
Yeah, what's the topic?
This is the fifth dimension.
Ooh, it's kind of like, reminds me of the sci-fi.
Totally.
Feels like when you say that.
Yeah.
But it's a cool topic.
It is. It's another wormhole.
Oh, yeah.
But it really goes with what's going on right now. It's important. It was really something we needed to talk about.
I agree.
Yes.
Cool. Well, before we jump into it, how about anything from last week?
I have a few things. First of all, last week we did Nostradamus, Prophecies by Nostradamus, and that had a great response. It was, in its first week, the highest listened to episode that we've had.
Wow.
Yeah. People love the topic, and I don't blame you guys. I love to talk about him, and we will definitely have to do a part 2.
Cool.
I got so many good responses, people saying thank you for, setting my mind straight a little bit on what actually is happening, and that, a lot of people are afraid that the world's just going to explode or there's going to be one big nuclear bomb or whatever,
Right.
So I had a few people tell me thank you. It calmed them down.
Cool.
So we're hoping to do that more with this episode today, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sweet.
Yeah. And then I have one thing I wanted to read here. This is from a new listener. Her name is Kaylee, and she says, "Hi there, Samantha. My name is Kaylee, and I happened to recently stumble upon yours and your husband's podcast, and you two are absolutely amazing. You literally make me feel like I'm not crazy. I have been having high vibe experiences with spirits whom have passed for about the last 3 years, maybe longer subconsciously. I had always questioned myself until I had listened to your podcast. The one where you talk about the shower meditation and where you used to feel uncomfortable, I couldn't believe how much I could relate to that. I had talked about how at first with those meditations, I felt like I was naked and I was so exposed to, and the spirits wanted to talk there that it made me uncomfortable.
Right.
So she's saying that she was feeling the same thing, which is really cool to know
neat.
that, other people have felt that. She said, since then, I feel I have set better boundaries and no longer feel as if I'm being watched. I know there is so much to learn and I am open and willing for it all. And I actually, when we're done here, I have a reading with her and we're going to work on this. And she's amazing so far. We've been talking and we had a little recording issue today. And I told her, I'm running a little bit behind. And she's like, I kind of felt like there was something, so she's already working on it.
My husband's being a dum-dum.
Yeah. No, things happen.
kidding.
So, yeah.
That's cool. Well, thank you, Kaylee.
Yes, thank you so much for that. And I look
sharing.
forward to doing your reading here soon.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's all I have.
Cool. Well, then shall we hop into episode 62?
I think that's a good idea.
The fifth dimension.
The fifth dimension.
We're not necessarily going to hop into the fifth dimension right this second.
Not yet. I
Cool.
wish. This was a confusing topic for me. You had heard about it first, I believe, in one of Dolores Cannon's books. And we're trying to explain it to me. And in my mind, I'm picturing the Earth. And then I'm picturing a little ghost Earth moving away from the actual Earth when I think of moving into the fifth dimension, and that's not what's happening at all.
Right, no.
So if you guys have the same idea, get that out of your head, because that's not what's going to happen. But doing this research and seeing what's going on in the world and hearing some different things, it really makes sense now, and I've wrapped my head around it.
We hear the term shift in this a lot.
Yes.
So we want to think of that in a physical sense.
We do.
When it is physical because it's within us.
Right.
However, it's not necessarily a physical motion per se. I think that there's a couple things that are involved with the Earth's axis itself, which are involving, motion.
Yeah.
But I feel that's a lot slower process.
Yeah.
This is a more internal
exactly
thing.
Because we live right now in the third dimension, basically. And so we think in the third dimension, which means that we only perceive what we see. most of us don't, well, I mean, we do believe that there's more, but a lot of people don't believe that there's more. They live strictly in this third dimension of what's put in front of them.
Right.
So moving into the fifth dimension is more about internal, who you are, who you want to be, how you treat people. And so we will get into all of that. And I'm very excited to do that.
Yeah.
So first, let me give you some information on what is the fifth dimension. So the fifth dimension is a level of consciousness that we move into this level after self-realization has occurred. Self-realization is a very important level in a spiritual awakening. I'm going through this. I'm not anywhere near being in this fifth dimension because you can move by yourself too, you know?
Yeah.
I'm in the fourth dimension, and we'll get into the differences. But one of the things that's happened in this fourth dimension is that self-realization, is that understanding of, okay, I am this little itty bitty tiny peon in this big world. You know, I have issues I have to deal with. I am not perfect. It's all of that. You have to be able to open yourself up to that, and that's very difficult.
Right. I think what a great phrase that I first heard from you, wherever you got it from, that kind of summed that up for me, where I felt like it wasn't just a spiritual awakening. It was now, okay, I've been shown enough to be convinced that there's much more to life than this body.
Yes.
It was then after that into this where you shared realizing that I am not human having a spiritual experience. I'm a spirit having a human experience.
Bingo.
And that kind of really summed that up for me.
Yeah.
And sometimes, honestly, which is part of our lesson here, I feel like, is that fourth dimension can be a daily process.
It is.
It can be a day-to-day process.
It is.
It's easy for me to kind of slip back into the third dimension and sort of feel like I'm just sort of this body walking around, you know, following the herd or not following the herd or whatever it is, but that I'm just being this human body.
Right.
As opposed to using it as a transport to get me from lesson to lesson.
Right. Yeah. We're going to get into that too. That's a great point, because that's exactly what it is, really. As we had mentioned, it's not a physical existence. It's emotions. It's a plane of existence. It's not physical.
Yeah.
Each dimension has certain laws and principles that are specific to that frequency of the dimension. So let's explain a little something first, in case you're kind of new or you know, haven't heard our stuff on energy and how that works. So we all have a level that we vibrate at, and that depends on us. It depends on how we perceive things, how we handle things. The more, how do I put this? The more in tune you are, the more spiritually enlightened you are, the higher you vibrate. And the higher you vibrate, the higher of a level of consciousness that you can get to. So you have to have those high vibrations to get out of this third dimension. You can't stay in the third dimension with the mindset that has been given to us.
Right.
You have to move through it.
So like a good example, I think, to share would be you, for example, your gift. The other side vibrates at a different frequency than we do.
Right.
But if you can change, like you're tuning a radio, your dial, to that frequency, which you're very good at and can connect.
But at first it was very hard.
Right. And you even said sometimes it sounded like a scratching record or something, that you weren't dialing it in. So you've learned how to dial it and just keep the dial there.
Yes.
But that's showing you're able to change your frequency, and now you can hear. Just like a dog can only hear certain frequencies that a human being can't hear.
And I have changed my vibrations and my frequency, like you say, not just because of my psychic ability, but because of the work that I've done on myself. And we'll get into that in the fourth dimension. But it really is a collective thing. My abilities have definitely opened up a whole different world to me, which in turn has made me want to be a better person and has raised my vibrations because of that.
Right.
You know, it's my birthday weekend.
Yay.
And thank you. And I sent a friend $10 so that she could get herself a pizza or whatever. I was just like, it's my birthday, but I don't care. I don't want anything. I just want to give.
That's
and
good, babe.
that's something that comes with this, is that you just kind of feel like you just want to give. You don't want to take. You just want to give.
That's good.
You know? I just want to.
That's
so,
awesome.
one way that they explain this, which is a very good way to look at it, is the third dimension is about seeing. You really only believe what you see with your eyes, not what you feel so much. Or
Exactly.
we were talking about this earlier today about if you're blind, how do you perceive things? You perceive things very differently. They probably perceive the world by feeling, by hearing, but your vision, it clogs you. It really does. And so that's kind of what you have to get through in this third dimension.
Yeah.
So what I wrote here about the third dimension is, again, it's a level of consciousness that is very limited and restricted. It runs on core beliefs, things that are rigid that we've been taught since we were young, a fairly inflexible set of rules and limitations. Example, we believe that our bodies are solid. They are not solid. They're really not. In this dimension, we can't walk through walls. No. We can't levitate. We can't do those things. In other dimensions, we can, because our body, we realize that our body is not solid.
Right.
It's very confusing, but that's a little bit.
Yeah, and what makes it, I think, more kind of mind-baffling is that both of these dimensions can exist on one plane.
They all do.
So that's what becomes, because then you start going, well, no, that person can levitate and this person can't, or that thing,
right?
That person can read minds and this can't,
right?
Then they're a freak of nature and they're not, you know, or they're a hoax, they're not. Frequency,
right? Well, I think something else that we've been taught too is like that dimensions are bad. Kind of like if you look at Stranger Things and they talk about the upside down, and that's a different dimension. You're basically in the same place, but it's a totally whacked out place. Maybe there are dimensions like that. Maybe, I don't know.
Right.
But that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is positive, is good things, you know?
Yeah.
Break those stereotypes. I know there's a lot of other shows that have done those types of things too. Right. You know, you're stepping into the new dimension of terror. Not terror.
No. No.
Much better than
this
here.
This is what I would call, and what I'm going to honestly say, I believe, is kind of what the Bible refers to as the rebirth of our world and our species.
Yeah. Something else about the third dimension is that everything is subject to gravity. Physical objects cannot disappear. We cannot read each other's minds, and there is a lot of judgment and fear. So then moving into the fourth dimension, this is where I'm going to assume a lot of our listeners are, because I feel like a lot of the people that listen to our show are working on their spirituality. This is something that they're interested in, and they're starting to become enlightened. And like you had said before, this isn't a place you stay. This fourth dimension, you don't stay here. This is the journey. This is you going from the third dimension into the fifth, and you're constantly moving. But you can move backwards, which is what you were saying before.
You can.
This is a constant daily struggle. It is.
Yeah.
When it first started for us, it was really hard. I don't feel like I'm trapped in this third dimension as much as I was. I feel like I do go back from time to time. But before, I feel like I was way shorter into the fourth dimension and would go way farther back into the third, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it was like a 1 step forward, 2 steps back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now I feel like I'm much closer to this fifth dimension, and so that even when I do back up, that it's not as bad as it used to be. I don't get as low as I used to, really. If I do, it's probably an earthquake that's coming. So that's the only time that really happens.
Right.
So it's definitely a process. It doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
It really means major change too. But let me tell you some of the things about the fourth dimension. This is where your spiritual awakening happens and you start to experience your heart opening. Everything within you starts to feel lighter because you start to see what's really going on, what's out there.
And what's important.
What's important. It's not just the third dimension. You don't know what that means. Like, I'm just learning what that means. But at the beginning of this, you don't really know what that means. But you know that third dimension's weighing you down, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know? Let's see. A sense of feeling uplifted. Manifestation happens quicker. I think a lot of people that are in the third dimension probably don't manifest much anyways, but in the fourth dimension, I think this is where a lot of the manifestation happens, and it does tend to happen faster. As I've moved along, my manifestations are easier. They happen faster, or they're more like, if they're going to take a while, I usually have some kind of an idea of what's going on.
Right.
You know, so it's just something, it starts to open up. You start to live more in the present. Stop worrying so much about what happened in the past, realizing that your past is who you are. It makes you who you are right now, but you're changing. You know, you don't live there. That's not.
It doesn't define you.
It doesn't define you.
It's a part of your history, your
Yes.
path. So you can't say it's not a part of you,
Right.
but it doesn't define you.
Right, exactly. It doesn't define you. It
'Cause
really
you can
doesn't.
change at any moment.
And really, I think one of the things I've always realized, but even more so now, is that everything that has happened in my life, from abuse that I suffered as a child to losing my mom to the divorce, it has all made me this person that's able to help people with those things because I've personally been through them now.
Yeah.
So if you look at it more of like, this happened to me for a reason instead of why did this happen to me?
Yeah.
It starts to change your perception.
Yeah, I think that's part of the concept of rising above a situation or a trauma, as hard as it possibly was, you know.
It's very hard, yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what? I've seen this a lot lately is that spiritual people, especially, a lot of us, if not all, really have suffered some kind of major trauma.
Yeah.
A lot of us have had really bad childhoods to one degree or another, and those are the things that I feel like we do kind of come here to have to learn those lessons, but also because we know we're going to help people with those things.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of experience those to be able to help people.
This is true.
Yeah.
You
It
know?
doesn't make it easier. You know, I
Right.
still have leftover trauma and,
Yeah.
you know, PTSD that we all kind of stifle from those
Right.
things. But if you can find a way to realize that it really all does happen for a reason, it helps to get past a lot of it.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Let's see. What else about the fourth dimension? You discover that time is an illusion. That one has been a trip for me in this. I think for you too.
Yeah.
It just feels totally different time.
It doesn't have the same relevance.
No, it doesn't.
As it did.
Every once in a while, I get myself caught up in I'm middle-aged and I maybe don't have that much left to do these things and I need to do them quick and I need to do them now. They don't want us to do that.
Right.
Because then we're living in the future. They want us to understand that, like, there's a lot that I want to do in this life, but if I don't get to do it in this life, it's okay. I'll do it in another one. Or there's, like we've talked about, we'll see things on the other side. That's not good enough for a lot of us,
No,
you know?
because you made a good point. Like, you know, from the third dimension to the fifth dimension is the fourth dimension. And that is where, for most of us, you've had a spiritual awakening and things are now starting to move.
Yes.
And change in your life. There'll be moments where they move drastically, and then there'll be moments where they feel like they don't move at all.
Right.
But in this, and it starts from the day we're born, but especially in this period when you've finally woken up and you're saying, okay, I'm listening, there's all those lessons in that fourth dimension
Right.
to be learning.
Right.
So if we're in a hurry and we're in the future, which is so easy, especially, you know, for you, if you have dreams and goals,
Yeah.
you know, you're manifesting kind of the finish line in your mind.
Yes.
But that's great to have that, you know, and I'm even speaking to myself, is like, have that goal, have that dream,
Right.
have that finish line. But beware of the obstacles
Yes.
along the way because they are part of the lesson. And maybe that's an old lady that you have to stop for while she crosses the road, and she might cause you to lose a couple places in line in the race.
Yeah.
So you might have to work a little harder to get back up there, but that's a lesson.
Right. You're right. And you know what? This time between when you're going from the third dimension to the fifth dimension, this is the time that your faith is going to be repeatedly tested. And I will tell you that it happens to us every single day. But I've gotten to the point, like the other day I got some news that I really didn't want to get, but I handled it in a very different way than I would normally. I got mad. I did.
Yeah.
I didn't understand why it was happening. I still don't, but I know that there's a reason and a purpose. Where before I probably would have gotten depressed for days and not talked to anybody. And you know what I mean? Like you handle things so much differently. And that's what they want to see. They want to see how you're going to handle these things. Have you learned? Have you grown? So like these computer issues that we had earlier, we have learned how to deal with these and how to work on these better to where if that was a test to absolutely see, have you two changed? Right. How's this going to end up? Is it going to end up in a fight, or is it going to end up peaceful? And there was no tension. Right. There was no upsetness. There was no nervousness or anxiety. It's majorly changed because we've changed in this fourth dimension. It's actually
changing.
Incredible. Right.
We're
changing.
And we're not perfect by any means.
Even in the fifth dimension, you're not perfect.
No, I'm human. You're human.
Right.
We're all human. We're all infallible. We're going to make mistakes.
And even in these tests, because sometimes I know that they're testing me, and I know that I'm not testing right. I'm failing their test, and I might be smack in the middle of it, and I know I'm failing their test.
Right.
But I know that they'll test me again. I know that it doesn't reset me back to zero. It just means I failed that test that day, and they will test me on the same thing again. Because they are testing our faith. They really are. And so if they just stop there and you quit there, then you've lost.
This week, up to today has been a big test for all of us. This whole household.
Yeah, you're right. It has.
So, and kind of like you were saying, within learning all these lessons, and a lot of my lessons were within the third dimension, just my normal kind of being just an everyday human kind of existence. I had a lot of lessons that I learned. Now, being where I'm at and the place I'm at in my life, and having, loved ones that are going through stuff that you can now share that experience. And now, like you said, it now sort of kind of makes sense why I had to do that, because someone was going to follow in my footsteps, and I had to be able to share and support and understand the best I could. Do I always? No, because I am human. But my mind is different than it was 5, 10, 15 years ago as far as its openness to other ideas, other possibilities, other consideration, theories, whatever it is. Just, I'm not so easily swayed by one thing or the other. It's more of a feeling.
Yeah, it is. And it's very contagious. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about, is that, like, there's people in our lives that we've said, we're not living like that anymore. We're not going to be confrontational. We just want to be happy. And I see those people starting to change. They start to get it. And when people start to see you being more peaceful and loving, they want to be more peaceful and loving. And that's what helps us collectively move into the fifth dimension too, which we'll get into a little later. But that's moving into the fifth dimension. We're helping, we're bringing people along with us. And a lot of us, without even realizing that that's what we're doing. And there's some people that they don't want to hear it, and they'll go about their way, and that's okay. You can only do so much. But I'll tell you that there's a lot of people that have come around that I'm surprised that they've come around, but they get it. They start to see that it's a beautiful world.
Someone I actually knew said on Facebook that the idea of this whole movement is to reach some unrealistic utopia. And I thought, well,
What?
why? Why is that unrealistic?
Right.
Because our perception of it is unrealistic? That would make more sense.
Yeah.
But no, I'm much more a believer in that anything is possible, especially with the energy and the vibrations all tuned to the same, if not similar, frequency.
Yeah.
Then you want to talk about, movements in masses and seeing things really change and seeing mind-blowing things happen because of this. It's possible.
Yes.
It's not an unrealistic utopia at all.
No, it's actually not. And that's...
It's how it was supposed to be.
Yes. I think one of the concepts that gets stuck in our mind a lot is that people can't change. And so why bother trying? Oh, no, you can. But I'll tell you, it is a lot of work and it is a lot of emotion, but it is worth it. I feel so much better about myself physically in every way that I can imagine just because I've gone through this and I'm going through this transformation and change. It is well worth the emotions and the sacrifice.
Right.
Absolutely. But you have to want to do it. And I think that that's a problem, is that a lot of people don't want to put the work in.
Right.
They just don't.
Or you in the process, and then, like we said, you can
get
reverse.
discouraged, yeah. Uh-huh.
But anytime, remember, we have free will.
Right.
So if your will wants to reverse that reverse and then go back in a forward direction, in a progressive direction, you will.
I'm being told, like, I'm feeling a message coming in this is a very important part to remember. This faith, that your faith will be repeated, it will be tested repeatedly, because that is the key to this. There are a lot of people that think that bad things happen to them all the time. Those aren't bad things happening to you. They're tests and they're a part of life. And if you keep giving up and you keep moving backwards, it's just going to keep happening. Bad things happen to all of us.
Yeah.
Our faith is repeatedly tested in different ways. And it's very hard a lot of times for me to say, this is happening for a reason.
Right.
But today we talked about, I kind of realized a little bit of the reason of what happened the other day. I feel like sometimes I get excited and I try to rush into things and maybe shouldn't. And I have to have the reins pulled back on me a little bit.
Right.
And these are lessons to see, have I changed?
Right.
How am I going to handle this situation? Right. So instead of falling into a deep depression, I realized, okay, what are they trying to teach me here? Slow down.
Right.
You still aren't slowing down completely.
Yeah, I mean, you have to remain teachable.
Yes.
The point that you say, I know how it goes and I know it all, then you're not.
No.
and you've closed your mind off it. And again, none of us are perfect, but if you can recognize the error,
right.
Like I had a situation with a close friend, kind of didn't go real well, and I was probably on the harder side of, with him about some things that I had going on, about some situations, and then, I kind of came in the next day and was talking to you about it, and, Samantha was like, you're kind of hard, yeah. I mean, I know where you're coming from, but, you got to watch that. And she's right. I could have just been immediately like, you know what, and got all uptight and upset. Mm-hmm. No, it sunk with me, and I sat and I said, I'm going to reach out and write him a text and just let him know, hey, I love you, and I'm sorry if any of this, what's going on with me, came out, but I just felt like I needed to express myself. You know? And I'm not perfect. Even communication is hard for me sometimes, especially amidst of other stuff that might be going on in your life, so hey, we all have
human,
we all have moments, but it's about moving forward, and that's all we can do. We can't go back and change the past that maybe you even feel like, if you feel like that's defines me, which I don't agree with, you can't change that. What's defining you is the moment. What is your attitude, your perception, your belief, your level of faith? What is that right now?
and how you handle that situation. It doesn't even always have to be the situation itself, but how you handle it afterwards says a lot about your growth. The fact that you did that, the fact that you didn't get mad at me for saying how I felt, and that you did, message your friend, and that's great. That is such growth, and that just shows that, this is really, it is a growing experience, and it is a learning experience. And even when you live this spiritual life every day that's become a normal part of our lives, you're still human, and you still have those times.
Yeah.
It's so don't beat yourself up about them. I do sometimes. So when I get mad, I get mad a lot less than I used to. But like if I yell at somebody, if I'm driving and they cut me off and I yell at them, I get mad at myself. I'm like, what good is that going to do you? You're just getting yourself mad.
I catch myself being correct. At first I want to say correct myself, but I realize
they're correcting you.
Yeah, they're correcting. But I realize that starts to go away more.
It does.
This wanting to bicker and fight and struggle and pull and tug, and
I don't want it. Yeah,
I don't really want to do it. I want to keep moving in a forward direction.
Yeah,
because everything that I'm seeing right now, great. Yeah, I've seen it. So now I want to move on to something else I haven't seen.
It feels like a vacuum to me, almost like it's hard for me to resist. Like I'm being pulled in, and at this point, it's where I have to go. It's like when you see movies of, people being abducted, right. It's like, okay, let's go. Let's finish this. So let's go into the fifth dimension, what that is, since that's our topic. And that's where we're all trying to head if we're working through this.
Yeah.
So the fifth dimension, and we're talking about this personally, individually right now, and then we will talk about it collectively. But what happens when you are enlightened and you have moved into the fifth dimension? All of your emotional, mental baggage, it's basically left behind. Not that it didn't happen to you, not that you didn't learn your lessons from it, but it's left behind. It's not a big deal. It's not something you dwell on. You learn how
to take it off your shoulders and put it down.
Yes.
And walk away.
Walk away from it. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And some people might say that that's a lot easier said than done.
That's why it's a process.
Yeah.
That's why you don't go from the third to the fifth dimension without going through the long fourth dimension walk.
But it's possible. We see it time and time again, whether it's news stories or there's best-selling books about people that have been in the lowest of low and have excelled by sheer determination and faith.
Right. Exactly. There is no anger, hostility, and guilt in the fifth dimension. There is no suffering. Manifestation is instant. So basically you think of something and it can happen if it's meant for you and you're asking for it, right? Which you are, because you're in the fifth dimension. Communication is mostly through telepathy. I've been taking these courses on Udemy. I've found them very interesting, and I found a telepathy course, and I want to learn how to do it. I want us to be able to talk telepathically. Right. I can talk to the dogs telepathically, so I got this course so that I could do it. This is something that it's like the language of the fifth dimension.
We kind of do it a little bit. I think we've talked about it with like dinner ideas,
random things, for sure.
We'll kind of start thinking it and then try to get the other one to guess. And more times than not, you guess.
You do too. We're both pretty on.
One.
We never know which one has the thought and which one was predicting the other one's thought.
But it's usually always the same.
Yeah, it is. It's funny.
And then even the manifestation part. Mm-hmm. I mean, I kind of showed myself that a while ago, like when I first started building the studio.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was like, all I need is this. Now I just made a simple request.
Yeah.
And the silly part is I'll make it real quick, but I just needed a small roll of that pink insulation. I didn't want to go to the store and buy a whole piece.
Right. Yeah.
So, and I had a window here that I made an insert, and I wanted the space between the glass and the window and the wood that I made to insert have insulation on it just to help, with the sound. And we were walking around the neighborhood one day and we see this short, small piece of roll of pink insulation on the ground next to this house. They looked like they had done some work and put some stuff out on the driveway like, hey, if you want it, take it.
Yeah.
So we walked. I'm like, you know what? Just in case, I'm going to let that sit till tomorrow when we come back by. And sure enough, came back by and it was like, okay, there apparently nobody's taken it. And I took it. And it was like, people might think of that as just a coincidence, but it was something that I honestly really truly needed.
You needed it, yeah.
I didn't really want to go waste a bunch that I didn't need.
Yeah.
And exactly what I needed. I mean, almost the size itself was almost to the T. It's unreal.
It happens to us a lot. We've talked about, I think, the dog's ottoman. We got a new ottoman, the same one, just the same way. Manifestation is very, very real. But the key to manifestation is asking for it and then letting it go. And that can be very difficult.
And where you're coming from with it.
Oh, yes, very important.
I want $1 million, please. No, it doesn't quite work like that.
No, it's more like,
did.
Here's the thing. I needed a pair of slippers, right? But I couldn't find a pair of slippers that I liked. But I kept hearing, get new slippers. And finally there appears the perfect pair.
There they are.
It's like, it's there. It happens. You can do the manifestation so easily. So in the fifth dimension, if we can do it even easier, that's so cool. So we've talked about these dimensions personally of us becoming enlightened. But when we talk about the change, what's a good way to put it? Because it's not the end times, it's just the transitional time. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about globally
It's a
consciousness
shift
shifting.
in the consciousness.
Yes.
Now, this can happen. This is part of what we've talked about in the past couple episodes. I think past couple episodes is the shift in the consciousness, okay, along with the shift of the Earth axis that's going to change, obviously, our weather, and it's going to make the seas rise and things like that.
Yeah.
But with this process comes a shift in global consciousness as well. That's what we were kind of saying, is that we can all do this one at a time and individually, which we need to be doing. But as a globe, at a global presence, it doesn't require all of us
Right.
for this to be possible.
Yeah.
It really only requires 1%
Yes.
of the population of the world,
Right.
which, 7 billion people, yeah, it sounds like a lot of people, but only 1% of that
Yes.
isn't that much.
And it doesn't mean that every last person on this earth is going to change, because they're not. They're not. But as a majority, there will be a shift in consciousness. So let's talk about what it actually means when we move into this fifth dimension. What happens? All people will be living in peace and harmony, experiencing oneness with all life, animals, trees, everything, you name it, fully respecting the planet entirely.
And I think much more aware of each of these things' energies.
Oh, yeah.
Their individual energies.
For sure, yeah.
Your frequencies will be in tune more.
You will. Like, now when we go out into nature, we can feel the trees a lot. So I can only imagine that in the fifth dimension, it's even stronger, would be my guess. Love and compassion flow through all communication. There is equality, justice, and respect for all human beings on earth. No more hunger, poverty, or crime. Abundance for all. And communication with aliens and communicating with the other side easier, because once you raise your vibrations, you naturally become psychic, I believe.
I was going to say, that when we were getting into the Egyptians and studying that, and how we all believe we have 5 senses.
Right.
Right? Well, according to them and a lot of other theories, is that no, we have 360 senses.
There's a lot of senses, yeah.
But because we are so not tuned to the frequency we should be tuned to, we can't pick up on those senses.
Right.
But now we're in an age where, people like yourself are showing, ooh, there's this other sense, and that
Right.
are very valuable.
Yes. We're currently going through this transition time, I believe. Now, I could be totally wrong, but there are a lot of other spiritually, enlightened people or psychics, mediums that feel the same way.
Yeah.
So for this, we're just going to say that for us, we feel like this is where we are and this is what's happening, and that we're already going through this dimensional shift. So this right now for us is this transitional time. which is, they call it the end time or experiencing the death of the third dimension, because it is really putting the third dimension behind us. Our structure of reality is collapsing. It is. Everything around us it's collapsing, and that's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
A lot of people look at this as the apocalypse. They believe that this is the end of the world.
I think that there's a lot of similarities to the book of Revelations.
Yes.
Now, again, we're talking about something that's been written thousands of years ago and translated through language after language. But I think my honest opinion is, yeah, it's very similar. It's almost ironically similar
Yes.
to it, except we've got to look at it in a modern term.
I did a lot of reading on this, and I read a lot of Bible passages because I wanted to kind of see where things could have been mistaken or translated, or what. I think that the problem is that this writing was so old, and that their visions, the way they described them, were so different than what we see now that we can't possibly understand what they were trying to say. But people take like the word devil as actually meaning that there is a man with a pitchfork that's controlling you, and that's not what's going on. And
I don't
so
believe that.
That's a lot of what the Bible talks about is the devil. Well, the devil is not physical. The devil is in all of us.
Yeah.
It is. It's in all of us. And how much of it we allow to control us depends on us.
And you're usually tested with that when it's a choice of free will.
Right. So in Revelations, it talks about that towards the end times, there's going to be deaths by sword, famine, and plague. That's Revelation 6:8. Now, that's been going on a long time. That's nothing new. But let's talk about as we get closer. Let me read a couple of these to you, okay? Because we know that we are probably going to go through a situation with the Antichrist, okay, which may not necessarily be one person. It may just be the government that we're fighting with, that we need to turn peaceful. But I'll read this to you so you can.
Or just a general
evil, yeah.
in society itself.
Yes, exactly. The evil in society too, yes.
This paranoia and always on the defensive.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so this is from Revelations 13. It says, they worship the beast, saying, who is like the beast and who is against the fight? And the beast was given a mouth, speaking arrogant and blasphemous words, and was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. It was also given to him to make war with the saints and overcome them, and authority over every tribe and people in the nation given to him. So this is supposed to be a sign of end times and the Antichrist, what I just read to you. I would like to point something out real
Sure,
quick.
please.
Because we did talk last week about the possibility that our president could be the Antichrist. I'm sure I got some popularity on that one, but it is what it is. We got to be honest, right? So I did some math here, and next month will be 42 months since he's been in office. And there's a lot going on. You cannot tell me that man's life is easy right now.
No.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So, biblical here. But then let's talk about what happens after this fight, this, whatever this is, this good against evil that I don't think is, I know it's not what people think it is.
No.
It's a shift in the consciousness, but there does have to be this fight first.
Yeah.
There has to be an end to it.
Yes.
And that's what we're working for.
Yes. I think most of, again, if we can just take the protests and the riots and things that have happened more recently, remove the looting situation from that right now, because these are separate groups that want to cause problems.
Yeah.
Whether it's white supremacy groups or just whatever, hooligans, who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I'm just saying, if that is what's going on, let's remove those from the equation and just say these protests, these people didn't start out being, aggressive.
Right.
It didn't. But it's going to take that, I believe, to get their attention.
Yes.
That you do have to, unfortunately, and maybe in this situation, fight fire with fire to get their attention to say, no more.
Right. Let me read this from Revelations. This is, like I said, after the fight. And I saw an angel come down out of the heaven, having the key to the abyss and holding in his hand a great chain. He seized the beast and bound him for 1,000 years. And what we've been told, not just from the Bible, but from Nostradamus and other predictions, is that once this shift into the fifth dimension happens, there will be 1,000 years of peace.
Yes.
So they line up. They
Yes.
do. They line up very well. The problem is it's all about translation.
Yeah, because we're talking Book of Revelations, other than, it does talk about volcanoes and fires and plagues, and which are happening.
Right.
And they have been happening for some time, but it doesn't give a definitive time that I know of in the end times of where it begins and where it ends. It doesn't give us a date for either.
Right.
So can you read into that in certain periods? Sure you can. But a lot of this really does line up. Problem is like you said, the translation of this fight in good with good and evil, and we hear that it's going to be angels and demons coming from under the ground and angels out of the sky, and I think we're trying to make this too literal instead of metaphorically.
Exactly. Thank you.
Because we all know that we can't see angels.
Right.
So why the heck would we be able to see a demon?
Right.
If we can't see an angel. It's a metaphor for the good and the bad, the energy.
That's right.
There is an imbalance, and there's going to have to be a struggle before one can be determined the victor.
Right. Exactly. So let's just say that this is this time. We watched a video done by another medium the other day who is also predicting that this is what's happening right now, and that we're going to start to see more and more of this. And unfortunately, I do believe that. One of the things that I look at when I make certain predictions is the energy that's happening with that prediction right now. Mm-hmm. Things have never been like this before. No. We have never, at least in the United States, had this going on here. We're not the only country that's having problems, but the United States right now is facing something pretty impressive. Mm-hmm. And with everything else that's going on in the world, I don't think there's ever been a time that we could say that this is a possibility more than we can now. This year has shown us that things can happen so fast and things change like you wouldn't believe.
Really fast.
And there's things coming out in the news, and I think more is going to come out and more is going to come out, and we're just going to start to be really bombarded by everything that's coming out and seeing that we have to make a change. Mm-hmm. We have to. But I know there's a lot of people that say, and you've said it yourself, because there's so many people. How are we supposed to make this change, right? And how is this going to happen so fast, too? Mm-hmm. Okay, so a couple of things that I read, and this is really an interesting way of looking at this, kind of like what you were saying. It says, first, millions of people on the planet are now experiencing an awakening. And there are. I tried at first to think that it's just because I'm getting older and I meet more people. But let me tell you something. People I've known my whole life are all of a sudden becoming spiritual, and they're moving into this as well.
This is not a term that I heard in the 70s and the 80s very much by very many people. It's now, and if I did hear it, no, I'm not trying to pigeonhole anybody here, but usually they had tie-dyes on and crystals, and they were kind of hippie-ish. I'm hearing it from every walk of life now.
Yes. And those of you that feel this, we were put here for a reason. Mm-hmm. We decided to come back during this time so that we could help this shift. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of us, I've talked to a few that have said that they knew that they were here for a reason. And I've always known that there was a reason. I thought it was mostly with the animals and stuff, which it may still be. This part of my shift could be taking care of the animals. Who knows? I could be like Noah, But we don't really realize it until we get older, oh, wow, maybe I am here for a bigger reason. And now it's all starting to come together for a lot of us. But the cool thing about it is something called the 100 monkey effect, which this is kind of what you're talking about.
Okay.
It's a hypothetical phenomenon in which a new behavior or idea is spread rapidly by the unexplained means from one group to all related groups once a critical member of one group exhibits the new behavior and acknowledges the idea. So basically, if
It's like a herd effect almost.
Exactly. And that everything starts there. If you think about it, it was like somebody had to start this idea, and then it spread to more and it spread to more. Well, that's how this 100 monkey effect works. So you spread, and you don't even have to preach. You know, like there's a lot of people like, I don't want to preach what I believe. Just being a good person and just people seeing that change in you and wondering why you're glowing and why your life is getting better and why you've changed so much, it starts to become contagious, and they will see it.
I've had that happen to me more than once in my life.
Yes.
Where I've asked somebody or followed them kind of because I was getting that from them.
Right.
So, yeah, it seemed like at some point in our society it became cool to be tough.
It did.
And,
but, yeah.
I don't know where that happened, but it's still going on. And when that becomes uncool and being loving becomes cool again, that's when you know that effect is happening.
And it is happening.
It is happening.
You can see it, especially in the younger generations. They're not like our parents and our generation. They don't want that. They want something better. Yeah. And they're going to do it. Something else to remember about this movement into the fifth dimension is that not everybody's going to go. All souls have the choice to enter the fifth dimension. Right. They have to hold the energy levels that exist in higher vibrations. Now, if you ask me what happens to them if they don't make the shift, I'm not really sure. I know that they're not just sucked up by some devil or God or something.
You stay in that perception of reality. You stay in some level of unhappiness or misery, refusing to see that light, to see the change. So a lot of people might go, well, how does this correlate with Revelations and in the sense of the second coming of Christ, okay? And because according to Revelations, Christ comes down and he takes all the good souls and there's a big fight that happens on the earth and the good wins and then he puts all the souls back down on the planet and it's heaven on earth.
Okay.
For eternity, okay?
Makes sense.
Well, we know through science that we're going to get to a point where the human life will go on until it just doesn't want to live anymore.
Right.
And it will decide when to die.
Right.
Our bodies won't die.
No.
If we're looking from it from a point of view or our belief system as far as reincarnation and coming back, we can't expect to necessarily then, based on the translation of the Bible, to assume that Christ is actually going to come down from a parted clouds into the world, and he's going to look exactly how everybody thought he was going to look, or we've imagined or been told. Maybe he chooses to come back in another life, just like we all have, as far as we believe. Mm-hmm. And it's our faith when he comes along and either says it is me, or you make up your mind whether it's me, which is kind of what he said to begin with or not.
Right.
He didn't really say that. He just said, I'm the same as you, which I have a feeling this person's going to say the same thing.
Right.
I am you.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm the same as you. I'm the same as God. We're all one.
Yeah.
This person I feel like is kind of what Nostradamus is saying is the great one.
The great mind, or the
great mind
one.
is going to come here for this 1,000 years of peace.
Yeah.
This, to me, is what I believe to be that.
Right.
So it's not a biblical kind of fire and brimstone scene.
Right.
It's more of a modern reality. What's this reality now?
Exactly.
So just like Christ was born into this world as a fetus and born and raised up, it will happen the same way.
Right,
okay?
Exactly.
But there will be a great one that comes back during this time of peace.
Yeah.
And that shift is where everybody decides, it's not like we're all picked up and floated up in the sky and they come in here like janitors and sweep and clean and get rid of all of our trash.
Yeah.
No, we made the frickin' mess.
We have to clean it up.
We have to clean it up.
And that's what the light workers are here for.
And they're trying to tell us you have every bit of power and everything you need to do it, but we're not going to do it for you.
Right.
It's up to you.
Exactly.
This is the lesson. Probably the one ultimate lesson.
Yeah.
There's an old term, and I'll say it. It has profanity. You don't shit where you eat.
That's true.
And that's kind of what they're saying. It's time to clean up, folks.
It is. So before we run out of time, because this is really important stuff I want to get to real quick, is how do we do it? How do we move ourselves into this fifth dimension? How do we find a way to work together? Okay, so I'm going to give you some ways that you can help yourself move into this fifth dimension through this enlightenment process, which will in turn help the global shift. Okay. You have to make changes. It's just the way it goes. You can't stay the same and expect that you're going to shift into the fifth dimension.
Right.
But the biggest change is you have to be honest with yourself. You have to look at yourself and at your flaws and ask yourself, what should I change? And I'm not just talking about, big gigantic things. I'm talking about small things that aren't healthy for you either. The way that I eat has changed, and I don't drink soda anymore, and I don't go out for coffee every morning, and I feel physically better. These things that we eat and we put into our body, they not only make us not feel good, but they weigh us down. They bring our vibrations down. It's really hard to get away from that. That I have been overweight and ate nothing but fast food for most of my life. So the last few years cleaning my system up has been hard. But if I go back to eating like crap, even if it's just like for one day, I feel it.
Yeah.
My body does not like it. That's my way of knowing that they want us to cleanse.
Yeah.
We have to look at these things about ourselves and we have to change them, whatever they are. And it's not just one thing, and it's or two or three or four. This is a process.
It's
Everything
ongoing.
about yourself, you have to pick it apart.
It's ongoing.
Yeah.
It's teaching us, I think, really that if you think this is hard, and I don't mean to sound like a downer, but you're going to keep working when you're there, too,
Right.
on the other side. So they're
Right.
trying to show you that it's all a process and that there is no unrealistic utopia.
Right.
It's what you perceive it to be and what you want it to be. So even when your work is done here in this life, you're going to get to that side and you're going to rest a little bit, and then it's going to be, what's my job?
Right.
What do I do next?
Right.
How do I get as close to that glowing ball of light that's so warm and full of love and understanding and compassion? What do I have to do next to get closer to it, because it's so amazing?
Right.
Nobody's going to tell you what to do. You're going to answer your own question.
Right. Exactly.
And so they're trying to teach us, learn to answer your own questions now.
Yep. Exactly.
I mean, we'll help you, and we're talking, but you got to listen.
Yes. What you see in others is really a reflection of yourself too. So once you change those things about yourself, you start to see people differently because you don't see your issues in them, if that
Right.
makes sense. And that goes with the second thing on this list, which is kill your ego. Spiritually aware people are kind, caring, and down to earth. Your ego is merely a product of your thoughts and your customs of the society that you know, or you knew, really, because let's put it behind us.
Right.
Once you kill that ego, you understand that being right isn't worth fighting for, and being the first to apologize and putting ego aside can save a relationship and achieve respect. And the more you do that with people, the better you're going to be with people, and the better they're going to be with people.
Yeah, ego is a killer.
It is a killer. And everything that you do, basically, that makes you, like, I don't know, what's the good way to describe it? Like those things that you put people down for, that's your ego talking. That's you got to let go of that.
Yeah.
I'm better than you, or I make more money than you, and I'm more important, whatever. This is your ego.
Right.
Come back down to earth and realize we're all on the same level.
Yeah.
Forgive people and forgive yourself. That's very important. Forgiving yourself is very important. You have to forgive yourself for the mistakes that you've made in the past.
I think you have to start there, honestly.
Yeah, probably.
Because that's where you're going to get the best practice before you're able to learn how to do it to somebody else.
It's true. Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, I still beat myself up about things I've done in the past, but I realize that they're a part of my story and a part of my journey, and that I can change those things and not to dwell on them as hard as it is. You have to embrace your fears. if you're afraid of something and you can't move forward because you're afraid of it, then it's crippling you and you're not going to be able to continue to move forward. You have to face those fears as hard as they are, whatever they are. You can't just let them eat you away. Meditation and yoga is very good. It's very, very helpful. Meditation especially. Prayers and pilgrimages. Traveling, meeting new people, seeing new customs, understanding that there's a great big world out there besides what we know.
Right.
Praying for people that even you don't know, that, you know, somebody that wrongs you. Those are all unconditional things. And detaching yourself from worldly things. That, I think, for me, has come naturally. I just don't want a lot of clutter. I'm not interested in, I don't need a bunch of fancy stuff. You just start to realize what's important, and that isn't the stuff that's made from other stuff. It's the stuff that's put here right on this earth, our loved ones.
The stuff, too, also seems to inflate the ego.
Yes.
Because the more you have equates to how much you make to have bought that.
Right.
And then how much you're willing to do or the links you're willing to go to protect that.
Right. Success is not measured on how much money you have.
No. Because
I'll tell you that teachers, they do so much for us more than a lot of professions that are paid very well.
Yeah.
You can't judge success based on money.
Yeah, and they're kind of some of the happiest people that I know. Most of the teachers I've met.
Yeah.
That I know personally.
Because they're giving back. And when you give back, you get back.
Yeah.
That's just the way the world works. You put out good, you get good back. So a teacher is every day putting out that knowledge. And yeah, it's their job. But especially if they love their job, they're changing the world. It's kind of a divine job, which, you know, why it was an essential job as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a great place to start, I think, some of the things that we can do to help us move into the fifth dimension. We are moving there. Whether we see it or not, collectively, we're moving there. There's more light workers on this planet now than there's ever been. There's more people spreading this than ever. And
it's like already been written in the stars. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
I think it's just sort of how much do you want to fight it?
Right. This year, we're only halfway through it, and it's been tough.
Yeah.
And you can look back at it and you can say, this sucked. Or you can look back at it and you can say, this changed us. This changed me. It changed our world. And we're going to keep letting it move us forward. We're learning more about each other. We're changing certain things. Yeah, bad things are happening and they are trying to separate us. And, you know, we have to social distance and whatnot. But that honestly doesn't matter because our consciousness collectively, we don't need to be within 6 feet of each other to talk.
No.
You know, it's all teaching us how to remotely be more spiritual with people too, I think.
I think this period's going to get tougher. Honestly,
I do too.
I think this isn't over.
No, by any means.
And like a lot of things in this world, unfortunately, for some reason, humans have to prove that it's got to get worse before it can get better.
Right.
So I do think it's going to get a little worse and a little bit mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Over the next probably year.
Yeah.
Or 6
at least
months.
6 months. Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of just wow, like whoa.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's necessary, and it is necessary for the change.
And please don't be scared by any of the things we're saying, because a lot of what we're going to see, we feel, is not going to affect the average person necessarily. Like, it won't affect you any more than how this already has. If this has affected you greatly, then it probably will still continue. But if, like, you're at us and you're just trying to stay home and stay out of the drama and out of harm's way, it should not affect you.
Yeah.
The world is not going to blow up or anything like that. You know, are we going to see fires? Well, we already have in the looting. Are we going to see earthquakes? Well, we already are. And we've already see famine. And we already see all of these things that the Bible tells us that we're going to see and that Nostradamus tells us that we're going to see. But we're going to start to see, I feel, an awakening. And so, but we have to hit rock bottom before that awakening, and we haven't hit it yet.
Exactly.
We will get there, and we will all be okay in the process. But those light workers, this is our time. This is when we have to do our job. This is what we're here for. So light work away.
Yeah.
Let's move us into this fifth dimension and get out of this nightmare of a third dimension that we're stuck in because it sucks.
Bust out your lightsabers. Start slicing some evil.
Use the Force. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just couldn't say it better.
That's my episode.
Cool. That was a good one. Bravo.
Yeah, you too. It was
I liked it.
That was, at first, when I started putting it together, I was overwhelmed and didn't understand much about it. But when you start to become more spiritually enlightened and you're connected to the other side, it's almost like you have a built-in teacher. And when you start reading something that you don't really understand, they have this way of breaking it down for you and giving you other tips and helping you understand it better. And so that's really been a part of this last week for me, is letting them kind of teach me about this. And we're getting there.
It's a topic that might require looking at under two different lights.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what I try to see it from a couple different points of view, or, you know, ones we can pull from.
Right.
I guess, so.
And, you know, it's hard for me to talk about, like, what I see for the future and the predictions because I don't want to scare people. And, you know, there's always that possibility that what I'm seeing is not right now, that it happens later. But I can tell you that if I'm here talking about what I feel and that I feel more, I'm pretty certain on that because I wouldn't get on the show and talk about it if I wasn't.
Right.
So just be safe. Suggestion, if you don't have to travel, probably a good idea. Just stay around where you are and let's just get through the rest of this year.
Yeah.
My suggestion.
Good advice.
I think so. So.
Cool.
That's it.
Before we say goodbye to all of our friends, do you want to share your page?
Yes. My website is SamanthaJonesPsychicMedium.com. You can find everything you need there. My email, you can set up an appointment, whatever you need.
Nice.
And you?
If you like the art, djonesartcollection.com, at djonesartcollection for Facebook and Instagram, and gypsybrown.com for the web, at Gypsy Brown Music for Instagram, and at Gypsy Brown Band for Facebook. The web is under construction finally.
Yay.
So there's really nothing there except the front page, but we're working on that.
On it.
New music. I think we're pretty close to finishing the first song off what will be a record at some point, a full record. And it sounds wonderful to all the guys. If you listen to this, wonderful job.
Yes.
And I'm very honored to be in the presence of all of you. So thank you. It's sounding exquisite. So I'm excited about that.
Me too.
And we're coming along. So
yay.
Live, I don't know what to say about that
anymore. We
so.
just got to go with the flow, unfortunately, you know.
But like I said last week, probably about 2 or 3 months, and we'll be releasing the first song. So
yay.
We're excited.
We are.
And that's all I got.
Well, wonderful.
Cool. Well, we hope everybody got something out of this and enjoyed this week's episode.
We do.
And you maybe go out there this week and see if you can start moving yourself into the fifth dimension.
That would be great. And share with us how you're doing that.
Yeah, please. I'd love to hear that.
Yes.
We both would.
Sweet.
And we hope you guys have a great week. And until next week,
peace and love.